This is The Bagel Report, a podcast exploring Jewish representation and identity in popular culture, with your hosts Esther Kostanowitz and Aaron Ben-Moshe, and now a production of J, the Jewish News of Northern California. Hey Aaron.
Esther.
We said it at the same time. I guess we're in sync today.
I think we are. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, we are in a week that has a lot of different things going on. By the time our listeners are hearing this, it will be the day after Mother's Day. And it'll be something like 2 weeks since the premiere of Netflix's runaway hit, Jewish Matchmaking.
Yes.
So you and I have very different histories when it comes to dating. And you met your husband super early when you were a child, and you are still a child bride. And although you're coming up on your year anniversary, you know, you're still very young and you didn't have any experience with all these apps and stuff.
No, that is the one thing. Like when I started dating Adam, there were no apps. Also, we had curfews because we started dating in high school. But most of my experience dating came from just being in places and knowing people and setting people up that way. So the app world is, even though I'm now familiar with it through other friends, it is a beast of a place.
It is. It's true. Over the years, as you may know, I have been writing about Jewish single life. I wrote about it for the New York Jewish Week for several years. I want to say 5 years. And I did a lot of interviewing of people who are connected to the singles industry. I talked to a lot of single people over those years as well. And of course, I had my own experiences. And I just wanted to say that I went into this extremely doubtful that Jewish Matchmaking as a series was not going to make me hate people and or myself, because sometimes these representations of Jewish culture in these spaces tend to not be great.
Well, let's run that down. What are the stereotypes of Jewish people entering matchmaking? Just name some of the stereotypes that people think of.
So matchmaking is one of those things that you hope people get into when they're totally ready. You know, there are people who went to Yeshiva University and Stern College, which are, you know, separate universities, and they might not have a chance to interact that much, especially once you go beyond that level of Orthodox into the super ultra Orthodox areas, which I'm not sure this show really does. But matchmaking is a time-honored tradition. Some people end up calling matchmakers Yentas because of Yenta the Matchmaker in our favorite show, movie to reference, Fiddler on the Roof. Sounds crazy, no? Matchmakers? No. Anyway, we have to say that every once in a while. Otherwise, we get canceled. So,
is it even a Jewish podcast?
That's right. That's right. Fiddler, check.
I think when I think of a matchmaker, I think of someone who is serious, someone who's tried a lot of different things and it hasn't worked. And even though traditionally, like throughout Jewish history, matchmaking is a successful thing and it works, a lot of people try to do something else. And I like that they're bringing it back, because I do think it could be a helpful thing, right? Someone in the community who knows everybody and says, oh, you know what? You remind me a lot of this person. Why don't you guys meet? Like, I do think that can be a beautiful thing. However, a lot of shows like this suck. They aren't good. They're very face value. They're very cringy, but also like not like surface level, like superficial. Thank you. And this show is a spinoff from Indian Matchmaking. And I watched that and I thought it was really fascinating just because I didn't really know the traditions of the Hindu culture and a lot of different people who were dating within the Indian community, I guess.
I think a lot of Jewish people watched Indian Matchmaking and found it very relevant because there's that sense that you want to marry within a cultural specificity. And it's hard to find that when you're just walking out in the world in different contexts. So the idea of, basically having a headhunter or a consultant, a recruiter, that's the model.
Yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
like trying to find somebody for the right job.
But the thing about Indian matchmaking was that there were a lot of parts that were criticized because they were very one way. It was one type of person represented in the show, and it was very traditional, and it didn't really feel relatable to me or other people I knew who were looking for love and maybe wanted someone within their community but didn't really want all of the things attached to that. And one of the things that actually surprised me about Jewish matchmaking was the matchmaker herself and the way she was perceived and the value she had and the way that she was able to connect with so many different clients in the Jewish community. That was very surprising that right from the get-go, that's what we're getting from this person. This is the show that we're getting.
That's right. Like I said, I have met some matchmakers in the past, and I have not found them to be as relatable and approachable and just overall accepting as Elisa has been. That when she asks questions about their observance or what they're looking for, she's not criticizing what they're coming back with. She's not being critical about it at all. She's just accepting that what they're presenting is what they're ready for. She does ask questions to help her in terms of narrowing down the field of job applicants, as it were. But she's not judgmental about what people are and aren't doing in terms of Judaism and Jewish practice.
Yeah, I think that's when I was like, okay, this is a different kind of show. Like when someone was explaining to her that, her parents grew up really conservative and she's not as Jewish now. That's what she said. She's not as Jewish now. And Elisa stopped the woman and said, hang on, you're less observant, but it doesn't mean you're less Jewish. So don't say that. Like own and accept who you are, because by doing that, I can help find someone that complements who you are. And I was like, yes. What? Hey, yes. Put that on a megaphone. That's brilliant. And like, even the fact that she's saying like, there's millions of Jews out there and there's millions of ways to be Jewish, just from like the get-go, the things she's saying. And at the same time, it also matches what we're seeing. A lot of the Jews who are looking for love are not Ashkenazi, which is really exciting.
Right. The people who are on a reality show are on a reality show for a reason, generally. There were a couple of people on this show who I didn't feel like they're just open to being on TV. Like a lot of reality shows are people who want to be on TV and less about like what the format is, to the point that some reality shows just do kind of casting and tell them it's for one show and it ends up being another show. And they don't care. They just want to be on TV and potentially famous. And I think there are some of those in this. I will not name names because I feel like we all know who I'm talking about. But I think most of the people on the show are exactly who I'd expect to see on this kind of show. Like, men who are too attached to their mothers, daters who have unrealistic expectations. But it's interesting because they're Jewish to see how many mutual friends you might have with these characters. I don't know if you did any of that. I know I did some of it, and my friends did as well, who were like, how am I connected to these people? Which is also interesting because, it's really underscores the idea that Jews are really a very small segment of the population.
But also we live in LA and a couple of these people are in LA. So that made sense. It wasn't so much Jewish geography, just so much as like we are in LA and they are in LA.
Right. I mean, I expected it to be more like my unorthodox life in terms of its depiction of Jewish observance. But this production really exceeded my expectations, was very sensitive. I hate most reality shows, as we've talked about here. And especially about dating, it can be super cringy. But, since this had Jewish in the title, we all know I was contractually obligated to watch it. So I did. And I really loved the message that we came away with, which is that there's more than one way to Jewishly identify, and that even two people who both identify as Orthodox might not be a match, observance-wise or personality-wise. So this level of nuance is extremely unusual in depictions of Jews in reality and in reality shows in general.
Yes, we saw lots of different types of Jews. We saw Jews who were the token in the community. We saw Jews who were very connected with their family and everybody lives here. We have Jews who left one Jewish community and now has to find a new Jewish community in a new area. Like there were different age groups. I thought that was really great because a lot of the time I think the women tend to be older in Jewish matchmaking. And then that becomes this whole, oh my God, you're so old and you're not married yet. Wow, weird. And, we saw young women and men. We saw middle-aged men and women. We saw people who were divorced and are trying again. Like it just felt very like, oh, this is a well-rounded group of people. And it felt thoughtful, like there was some intention there. But it also kind of felt like these people were already in her network. And maybe they were just like, hey, we're doing a show. Would you be interested in sharing your story this way, as opposed to like a casting call?
Right. I was thinking about this also. And I think I need to know more about the process that Aliza goes through to find the people both who are the central daters and the people who kind of come through as their dates. Because I want to know like how many people she has on her team. If she's doing it all hands-on and alone, which I doubt, that is super impressive, but she probably has other people helping out. It could still be impressive, but not the same thing. And the question of whether she has people in her network who have signed up to be considered or who have signed up to be matched. I don't really know how it works, but I think that I would like to know if there's a team involved doing all that checking and work and cross-referencing, or if these are people that she actually knows, has gotten to know over the years and is trying to help match.
I mean, it feels like she has a relationship with these people. Like one of the details that I thought was really brilliant, and I feel like it's just who she is as a person. I don't think it's in that intent, like that strategic, but maybe it is. Depending on who her client is, she dresses like where they're at. Like if she's with a frum couple, she'll be very frum. If she is seeing someone, like she was, one of the episodes, she's meeting with someone who's like a biker chick, who's very cool, is more spiritual than religious. And she comes in like a very casual outfit, still modest, but like also with like a leather jacket. Like it just is more casual. And I like that she shifts her vibe so that she's saying like, yes, I am more religious, but I'm not going to put that on you. Like I'm here for you. And I love that like camouflage almost.
That didn't occur to me at all. I did notice that she was very well dressed the entire time in a way that she seemed very comfortable in, which I was thrilled for her. But I do love that she's able to talk to people who are on different levels in terms of their observance and who have different perspectives. I think that's really remarkable. And I think it's what is making her such a wonderful character. She seems to help people identify what they're looking for, although some people listen to her more than others. And I think that, even when they're expressing things that they want that might be ridiculous, she treats it with seriousness. She tries to help them figure out what's a good expectation and tells them when their expectations might be unrealistic, but she tries anyway. And she did actually, in at least one case, find somebody despite a weird and superficial requirement that someone had.
There were a couple instances in this show where we see Jews of color. And I want to talk about them vaguely so I don't kind of spoil it. Like I want people to experience it themselves. But there are some very casual references of Jews of color where we see them just among the friend groups and they're talking and they're celebrating. And I love that. And I love that it's casual and they're not pointing it out, right? We need that, right? We need to just see it and it needs to be accepted and great. And then there are a few examples where Jews of color are talking about their discomfort within the Jewish community. And it still feels subtle. It doesn't feel incredibly forced, but that information is important for the matchmaker when deciding who to put this person with. And I just love the way that conversation happened, especially since it's something we've been talking about recently.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about just when the Jew of color showed up, I was like, why are all these people white? Why aren't there Jews of color? And then all of a sudden, Jew of color popped up, which was great. I was also thinking about the reactions, like maybe in the religious community to somebody who is a Jew of color might also be different than in the secular community. So that might have been interesting to examine a little bit. Like you said last week, when we talked with the folks from Lunar, who are an Asian Jewish organization, if you haven't listened to that, you should add it to your queue because it's an important conversation, is the fact that the Jewish community isn't always as accepting of people who don't look Ashkenazic or Ashka forward or Ashka normative or whatever you want to say, whatever Ashka you want to put in front of a word. So I think that the idea of having more diverse people in this show is a really great idea for season 2. And I'm sure that they will start, when they start casting for season 2, that will be something that they'll look for. I think, you know, the LGBTQ
yes.
community is not represented at all.
Completely missing.
And it's not addressed at all. And I feel like even if it had been addressed, even if Aliza had said either, I don't know what she does or doesn't do in terms of LGBTQ matching, but if she said, oh, well, you know, that's not really my area of specialty, but I work with matchmakers for whom it is, which is something that I think a lot of matchmakers do. I've interviewed a number of them. Even if we had that insight into the process of how casting was happening, that would have been interesting to include. I think that the diversity where it's good is the diversity of different styles of religious observance. The fact that there are older and younger daters, and also the kind of between segments, when Harry Met Sally style, older couples sharing their marriage wisdom was also a nice touch. And I liked the fact that we had a real sampling of cities represented as well.
Yeah.
And what it might be like to be Jewish in, was it Colorado?
Utah.
Sorry, Colorado. What it might be like to be Jewish in Utah. By the way, there were a couple of kids on the Birthright trip that I staffed who were from Salt Lake City, which is very unusual. But, you know, they also got connected to Jewish community through Birthright and started becoming super fans of Matisyahu. Anyway, I diverted from the main point, which is that being a Jew in Utah is not the same as being a Jew in Miami or LA or New York. So the idea of trying to show different styles of Jewish connection is something that is very powerful and very unusual. So I love when a show can bring in some nuance and show diverse perspectives within a category of things.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't mean to like repeat it. I also really love the importance of like hearing Morocco, hearing South Africa, hearing Sephardic. Like one of the guys being matched, he's like the head of the Sephardic Center in Miami. Like just the fact that there is visibility for Persian and Sephardic Jews in this show is just so refreshing because you just don't see it. We see it because we live in a community that's very heavily Sephardic and Persian, which is amazing. But it's just like, yes, there are Ashkenazi Jews in this show, but like you don't see them for a while.
Right.
Like you see them eventually.
Right. And I also want to just call attention to something that you were expressing before, is that even though you famously are not into shtisel and can't seem to get into it, that you were a super fan of Shia and Faye, who are the religious couple.
I want to talk about this because I loved them. I want Hallmark or whoever to look at the chemistry. I want a romantic comedy about this couple with a better ending. Like I was so shocked by how much I fell in love with these two people. And like, it's not that I'm shocked that like from people or very Orthodox people could act such a way. Cause I grew up with Orthodox people who are a hoot and they're so much fun and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're modest. or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like, oh my God, frum people are normal and fun to fall in love with. Like that wasn't it for me. It was that there was so much chemistry between the two of them. Like, have you ever seen a first date go so well?
Oy, Erin, I have. And usually
I
the
mean,
second
like,
date doesn't go that well. But
I mean, like, first dates are usually awkward, but like the fact that they were just so funny and they were like cute and they were like making each other laugh and it just felt like so nice. And I was just like really rooting for them.
I hear you. I think, on the dating platforms that serve religious people, there's like a ton of designations, not just like Orthodox or modern Orthodox or Torah observant or any of these other things, but also like yeshivish, Haredi, Hasidic.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
The idea that just, being Shomer Shabbos doesn't mean that it's a match. So
Yes.
I think that
and that's what I also loved.
Yeah. I think that, I wouldn't necessarily have described the chemistry as electric. I think that I love that's what you came away with.
Esther, it was electric.
Yeah, I guess, I've got a cynic's perspective when it comes to this stuff anyway, but I was really trying hard I was trying to suspend my judgment because I feel like for me, someone who learns or doesn't learn is not a deal breaker. For me, someone who I don't need somebody to go to services 3 times a day. I don't need that. But trying to also just say, I am not in this. I am not one of the people in this couple. And so therefore, I really shouldn't be judging other people about what they are and aren't willing to compromise on. So, and I also respect that, Faye has like a real idea of who she wants to be and who she wants to partner in life with. And, the chemistry I think that you're speaking of is also partially due to the Shomer Nagia concept, is that they really have to do all their touching through words and connection verbally, because they're not doing anything physically until they get married.
Yeah.
So I think that that's part of that whole interface that you were noting.
And the last thing I'll say about the couple is one of the things I really liked is that even though it went really well, first 2 dates or whatever, you see him meeting with his rabbi, who he like finds like, that's his person. That's who he like a therapist almost. It's like the person he talks to and confides in, which I thought was nice. But he was saying like, Ken, like, I'm not there yet. Like, I want to be, and I hope I can be, and I hope to be there one day. But like, is she going to like me for who I am now? And will she want to be with me and grow with me to be that person? And I just thought that was like such a nice, vulnerable conversation to see, especially from like a guy, just sharing how like, this is where I am now and I want to be there, but will that someone want to grow with me? I think like that's usually what you hope, right? Like your partner, you're marrying your partner or you're going to be with the partner now, but you're also growing with them. The goal is to also not be exactly where you are now in 20 years, unless where you are now in 20 years is like super good, right? Like I just like that there was that vulnerability there. And however their relationship ended, we know from Instagram that they are still in touch. So,
oh, Erin, you've been following them all on Instagram?
No, just them, just the two of them, just Faye. Well, because Faye is like an entrepreneur, so she already has like a very big social media presence. But I am following Aliza on Instagram too. I do know that they are still in touch with each other. I don't want to spoil the ending for anyone, but.
All right. Well,
I'm happy for that.
But
can we talk about our ach moment? Can we talk about like the ach moment? And I'm going to name him. Can we quickly talk about the ach in the room?
Sure.
All right. I know I live in LA and I know what I'm about to say could travel quickly and I hope it does. Ori, what the hell, man? What is wrong with you? The whole time I just wanted to shake this man. Like, what a dunce. Like, okay, when you're in middle school and you act like you're a 10 and you're like this cute guy, like, okay, fine. You're in middle school. Like you're still learning how to be a human being. But this man has got to be in his 20s, maybe 30. And he is just like so obnoxious. And he's like a swear word alert fuck boy. He's a fuck boy.
Oh boy.
Right? Tell me, right? That's what he is. And it's great that he's like super family oriented. And listen to this requirement for him. He literally only cares about what the girl looks like. She needs to speak Hebrew. It would be great if she was Israeli, someone who loves family and loves Los Angeles. Okay, cool. And then could also be blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right.
What Israeli do you know that's blonde hair and blue eyes?
That's what I'm attracted to. Hot blonde with blue eyes and is Israeli and speaks Hebrew. Well, good luck.
Yeah,
That is a very small cross section. But truthfully, Elisa finds him someone like that. So like, it's actually a miracle. And the one thing that I'll say is that when somebody makes a demand or a requirement like that, and then she says it's unlikely. She says it's like a restriction, but she ends up finding him someone who meets this ridiculous qualification. I think it also sets a bad precedent for other people to have unrealistic expectations. I interviewed somebody a while ago, long time ago, who was in his late 50s. I was interviewing him as part of an article that I wrote about what singles are looking for. And he said, well, I have worked hard all my life and I have a certain level of expectation when it comes to a partner. And I was like, well, I'm sure you sounds like you know what you want. And he goes, yes, I deserve, is the way he said it. I deserve a woman who is small and slender and can wear all of the fancy clothes that I would buy her. And I'm not willing to consider anyone who doesn't meet those qualifications because I deserve what I want. And that kind of articulation is not where Ori is now, because he's much, much younger, of course. But there's a feeling of entitlement and deserve. And what do I deserve? I deserve to be able to sculpt my own person. That's a shout out to that Hallmark movie that we had about the golem, right?
Like, are you talking to a golem?
Right. They're talking about a golem, but they're not talking about an ugly golem, that has all of the characteristics inside, but is actually made of clay. They're talking if they want all the shiny stuff, the powerful stuff on the outside. And it's almost like they don't care if the center is made of clay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't love that because one, that's way to be a shitty human being. But also, and listen, maybe this guy isn't a shitty human being. Just the things he says are shitty. I don't know. Maybe there's nuance there. Hard to find at the moment.
Also, reality show, it's really hard to know if what you're seeing is authentic. So,
see, but here's the thing. That's true, 100%. And he is in a loving family. And I believe that he has been raised by parents who love him, and he has siblings, and he has people who are around him and care about. This guy has friends. I believe this is a good guy, right? At its core, there's a good guy in there. But I just don't understand. Here's the thing. And I tell some of my friends this too when I'm, they're single guy friends. I tell them, if you are asking for a 10, if you are looking for a 10, in whatever that means, she's funny, they're funny, they're smart, they're gorgeous, whatever, abs, whatever. If you're looking for a 10, you have to look in the mirror and go, am I a 10? And what I mean by that is, are you living on your own? Do you have a job? Do you, work out? Do you do all the things that you are looking for in a partner? And this guy lives with his parents still in their big shiny house. He is kind of he says he's an actor. He says he's a model. He works for his mom's company. It feels like he does a lot of different things, but it doesn't really feel like there's a clear direction, nor, I'm just going to say it, does it feel like he has a personality. Like the first girl he goes out with is like a horse rider. She's so fascinating. There's all these different things that she has to offer that she's throwing out in the conversation. And he's just not giving anything back either. I don't know what this guy's interested in at all. And it feels like he has no personality. So that's really why he's looking for the looks. It's like he's a good looking guy, so he's looking for a good looking girl, and that's it. And it's dude, there is so much more.
Yeah.
Just look.
I mean, if you had ever been single at all in your life and ever gone to Jewish singles parties or anything, you'd know that Oris are actually very common.
And I know listen, again, like when I was like, I know I was single in high school, but when I was in high school, but even like growing up, but even like in college, even though I was in a relationship all this time, I did see guys like this, but you just hope that they grow out of it. Like I go up, there were people that were like flirting with my friends and I would go up to them and I'd go, excuse me. Like, all right, you're giving her this aptitude test. Let me ask you some questions, sir. And then we learned that this guy's a dud. The only thing he has going is that he has nice shiny teeth. And we all have nice shiny teeth because all of our braces just came off, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like I need to make a Netflix show called The Anti-Matchmaker or Tough Love, where like I just get all the Oris of the world. And I just am Miracle Max's wife and Olivia Dukakis's character in Moonstruck, where I'm just shaking people going, your life's going down the toilet. Like I need to humble people before they go out in the world and try again. I think that's
obviously the show needs to be called Snap Out of It.
Snap out of it.
But I would watch that show for sure. I have a couple more observations to make about this show. And I think we're going to be talking more about it in the weeks ahead. No promises, but we have something on the calendar that will be very interesting. Teaser. Anyway, I liked that the women were opinionated and didn't shrink away from sharing their opinions to make their dates feel better. So that was really positive representation. I liked Aliza's questions as diagnostic and not judgmental. She didn't care what the answers were. She was just asking so she could make the best recommendations.
Yes.
We saw that sometimes your friends give you bad advice, but it looks like encouragement, which is something that I think I saw a bunch of times in the, when the daters met with their friends, and some of them were just like, yes. And some of them were just not giving great advice. But it's really important to be able to distinguish between when your friends are telling you something that you want to hear versus actually giving you advice.
Yes.
There's strange B-roll footage in this show. I don't know if it resonated with you at all, Erin, but do you know what I'm talking about? There's
like when they're trying to make it like a locator.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of like kind of between scenes of dates. You get like establishing shots of beach or people in bikinis or people roller skating or
to show that we're in Venice, to show that we're in Miami
or preparing a cocktail to show that we're in a bar.
Yes.
But one of the things that I noticed is that there are a lot of shots of bagels. That's relevant content, folks.
Ooh.
There's a lot of bagels, especially in the first few episodes. It's very strange. But bikinis and bagels is the B-roll footage. So that's well named.
I love that. Yeah. I think that should be like a spin-off thing that we do. I don't know what that is or what that looks like, but bikinis and bagels. I dig it.
Right. We will not be wearing the bikinis. At least I can speak for myself. But anyway, I think all of that was great. I was very glad that something I thought would be like a dude makeover montage just turned into getting a new suit so that you could feel like you're approaching dating from a new perspective. I liked that message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, that was a really great message because when they were giving him a makeover, I was like, oh, they don't like the clothes he's in. And all she said was, no, when all the clothes you have remind you of the failed dates, it's just time to update it so you feel confident for like a fresh start. And I was like, that's why we should be buying clothes.
That's right. That's right. Go figure.
We love it.
And I also think that there's some lessons here that I think are helpful, is that first impressions are important, but aren't everything.
Yes.
We all saw some of these dates. There was some initial excitement fade in some of those cases. And in other cases, an initial kind of like indifference kind of deepened to some sort of enthusiasm. So, and in many of those cases, it went kind of the opposite way that I would have predicted. So again, the chemistry between two people is not something that you can necessarily predict or even assess when you're seeing it. So I think that was really interesting. And of course, the idea that dating in your 20s and dating at any age past 35 is very different. And people learn a lot in 20 or 30 years, and that comes out in their dating choices.
And I will say the message of this show is not Jewish wedding. It's not yes, it's Jewish matchmaking, but like she never says the goal is to get married. But the goal is to enter a legitimate relationship and not just a hookup. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We can keep trying. The goal is to just tailor it as specific as we can until you find the right person. And I love that outlook because a lot of the time, like the 90-Day Fiance and the Love is Blind, like literally you have a ticker going, okay, in 5 weeks, Bachelor, you have to fall in love. And it's like, well, that's an incredibly unrealistic expectation. Plus, everyone is having a date for the most part in their home. So it's not like they're going to Bali. They're not going to Italy. Like they are going to romantic areas, but they're going to romantic places within where they live. So it does feel real. It does feel like, okay, this is what a relationship could look like. And it does. It feels like natural almost, which is refreshing.
Yeah, well, it's clear this is one of those series that we're going to be talking about for a while. So
yes,
if you've seen Jewish Matchmaking, please weigh in. Tell us what you thought about the show. Did you find it realistic? Did you find any particular couples compelling? Did it remind you of the traumas of life past? And now you're in therapy trying to recover from all the bad dates that all of a sudden you remember in one fell swoop.
Yeah.
So
let us know.
We hope not. We hope that last one hasn't happened to anyone. Oh, just me? Okay.
But if you have crazy stories, tell us at The Bagel Report on Twitter and at TBR The Pod on Instagram. We definitely want to hear from you because I feel like everybody has crazy dating stories and some people want to try a matchmaker and maybe don't, or maybe people know these people. If you know these people, oh my God, tell us that we're wrong about Ori, or tell us that we have it wrong. We would love to hear from you.
Okay, so Erin, you had a great idea to make this kind of a Mother's Day episode because this episode is coming out right after Mother's Day. And we thought it would be good to do something to honor the mothers who brought us into this world.
Yeah.
And also to take a little bit of a pop culture lens on it, as we often do. So I just wanted to say something before we start all this mother stuff, because as you know, I lost my mother in 2011. The year after that, May was like the hardest month because it had her birthday, it had Mother's Day, it had like Lag BaOmer, which was her Hebrew birthday she always used to talk about, and her yard site, both the Hebrew and the English dates, obviously. And my inbox also got like this endless barrage of call your mom. Have you called your mom yet? Here's a gift for mom. Don't forget to get mom a gift. Don't forget to get mom flowers. And it was really painful, especially that first year. In the years since, I've kind of converted Mother's Day into more of a Memorial Day, kind of like remembering our Mother's Day, opening my home to people who have lost their moms. And we had like a brunch where people brought the dishes that reminded them of their moms. And we talked about like the things that our mothers taught us, with the good and the bad, because, there's always a collection of things that personify our parents. And, the influences are there sometimes in both directions. I'm also mindful that Mother's Day may be a trigger for some people who have complicated emotions because of a loss or because of complicated relationships with their mothers. So I want to say to all our listeners, if you spent your Mother's Day frolicking or verbally sparring with your mother, or with the mother of your kids, or with the mother of your grandkids, or with the mother of the kids who call you aunt, uncle, or anything else, great. And I hope you had a great time. And if you spent the day sad and a little disconnected, I see you. So this segment is going to be about our moms a little bit and about the moms of pop culture more than a little bit. And it's going to be in honor of Erin's mom, Marcy, and my mom, Shuli. I think we could also include Erin's mother-in-law, Beth. So I know she's a listener. We don't talk about her enough. So I hope she'll enjoy that. That's my Mother's Day gift to Beth. We love you, Beth Cooper. All right. Without any further ado.
Oh my gosh. I know this. I know that you do this every year. And yet this time when you said it, it was just so beautiful.
I got you with the emotion.
You did. You got me. I think that is such a beautiful way to honor and remember your mom and all the women in your life. I think and to like surround yourself with community at the same time. I love that tradition.
Me too.
So when thinking about this list of like, what are the TV moms that I think we love the most or love to hate the most, just in the last couple years of this podcast's existence.
Yeah, they're just so memorable. The memorable moms, you know?
Yes. Not that there's so many great TV moms and movie moms. I was asking Adam who his favorite TV mom is, and he said Sarah Connor from The Terminator.
Oh, dear. Okay.
I was like, that's the first one that comes to mind. But, you know, everybody has that mom that they love watching. And I think the most recent ones for me were the Maisel moms. You have Rose, you have Shirley, you have Midge, Imogene, Astrid. These are just some of the many moms represented in the show. And they're all so vastly different and yet really similar. And I don't know, they came up for me.
I mean, obviously that's spot on, and it's great also because often at least in the past in TV shows and movies, maybe you had like one mom archetype, or you had one older woman in the entire thing. And now we've got Rose and Shirley, who are both like the previous generation to that of the main character, but come from very different backgrounds socioeconomically and just in terms of how they relate to their Jewish identity. You have Midge and Imogene, who are like of the same generation, as is Astrid, but they're all coming at it from different perspectives. Imogene not being Jewish, if I'm recalling correctly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Imogene, aka Dodie. That weird thing that was in one of those episodes that we never picked up again. And Astrid, as Jew by choice, also is doing momming differently. So I think it's important that all of these kinds of approaches to parenting, to momming, are there for us to look at and, you know, not necessarily accept or reject any one character, but to kind of look at them and say, this one is so devoted, this one's a little nutty, but also like has her own way of showing devotion, you know, et cetera. And, you know, just wondering if the funnel cakes are delicious, for instance.
Yeah. And I think it's also really nice because even if these moms aren't perfect, they have each other. And I feel like in other TV shows, the mom always has the kids and the mom always has the husband or the neighbor that they don't really like, or the other mom that they're in competition with. But these moms, you know, whether or not they agree with each other's styles, they still have each other and can confide in one another. And we see that on screen. So we love to see moms supporting moms in Maisel, even if we don't think they're the best moms.
Exactly.
And moving on, we have to mention Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because it's been, a couple weeks since we have. And we've been mentioning Fiddler more, which doesn't seem right, but also feels right. So we're making an ode to our crazy ex-mothers, Naomi and Paula. As we've talked about a couple weeks ago, one is an actual mother and one feels more like a mother. And I love what you say about this. Sometimes found family is more nurturing than born family. And I think that is so important to have on screen.
Right. I agree. And I'll also say that I know it's not on our list, but it's going on our list as of right now, because I just finished watching the new episode of Ted Lasso.
Yes.
And I was just noticing the relationship between Keely and
Rebecca,
boss lady, Rebecca,
Mm-hmm.
who, I mean, it's not like there's that big an age difference between them. Like, I don't know necessarily that Rebecca could have been Keely's mom, but she's certainly filling that role in a way similar that reminded me of the way Paula on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend plays that role for Rebecca. So I thought it was just beautiful. Their friendship has been kind of like a girlfriend love story for all of the duration of this series. But in the last episode, there was a lot of like Rebecca comforting Keely and telling her everything's going to be okay and just serving this incredibly maternal role in addition to a bestie kind of role.
Yeah. Another great little quick one, even though the show ended, was it last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago? What did this show?
Who knows?
Oh my God.
It's eternal.
You're right.
It's just
Moira
eternal.
Rose from Schitt's Creek. She's just the craziest mom. I wouldn't want her as my mom, but I would love to have her as like a friend's mom. So I could just admire her from a distance.
Yeah. I mean, she's certainly iconic. Whether she's actually nurturing or maternal at all is...
or knows how to fold in the cheese.
Yes. Well, she does not know how to... she doesn't know what fold in the cheese means. And she is positively bedeviled with meetings, etc. So I can't imagine she's a very approachable person. She probably doesn't have a lot of time for her kids. But, you know, we see over the course of Schitt's Creek that maybe she wasn't such a hands-on mom to begin with, but they definitely all grew towards each other by the end of the series. Spoiler alert. But she is really one of those dramatic, histrionic, narcissistic mothers, etc., etc. But if her character were Jewish, can you imagine? Like the portrayal would just feel like it was all full of stereotypes, you know, and nagging. And I'm so glad that they made this an interfaith relationship, the Roses, where Johnny Rose could bring the Judaism and Moira could just, you know, be her own entity and universe.
Totally. And a more recent mom that I want to highlight, and I'm sure you do too, in the movie realm, is the mother-daughter relationship in Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. Rachel McAdams portrays Margaret's mom in the Judy Blume adaptation of the movie. It just came out. If you're looking for a great mother-daughter movie to see, if you haven't seen it and you want to see it this weekend, you should totally go see it. It was delightful.
It really was. I mean, I saw it in a screening last week and it felt really real. It felt true to the book. And I had actually forgotten, obviously it's been many years since I've read this book, but I hadn't remembered that there was such an inquiry into religion as part of this, even though it's obviously God is shouted out in the title, but you know, the idea that it's not just about this young woman's coming of age, but she's also trying to identify meaning in her life. So I loved that about it too.
Yeah, I still have the book. I brought it with me to California when I moved. I thought I'd need it for some reason. And I'm glad I kept it because when I got home, I looked through it and they really stayed true to the novel. And even the scenes, you're like, wow, that's exactly what it looked like on screen. And also, it made me kind of happy because when I was looking at this little kid, this, you know, girl with, you know, dark hair kind of everywhere. And she had this best friend who's blonde and kind of thin and beautiful. Not that the girl who played Margaret wasn't any of those things, but I was like, oh, wow. Like it kind of reminded me of myself growing up. And it was cool to kind of be seen in that way. And it made me excited that the kids were actually portrayed by kids and they gave Rachel McAdams like a great storyline about this mom who wants to be more involved in her kid's life, but then also doesn't want to lose herself in the process and having a supportive husband there. Like you don't really get to see that in the book. So I like that they flesh it out in the movie.
Yeah, I thought Rachel McAdams did a great job. I totally bought the mother-daughter dynamic. And I've always loved Abby Ryder-Fortson, who played Margaret. She was also in Ant-Man 1 and 2 as Cassie, the original Cassie.
She was so great.
And I just loved her. And that's why one of the reasons we didn't get into Quantumania, but like one of the reasons I wasn't so thrilled with Quantumania is because it was missing Abby Ryder-Fortson, who I thought was so great in the first and second Ant-Man.
Totally. And I also think this movie is great for any generation. I was so excited that when I was in the theater, I went by myself and there were teens and 20-somethings and moms and grandmas and all these people just in the theater laughing and enjoying together. And there were a couple boyfriends who were there and they were like, was it really like this? And, you know, the girlfriend's laughing, going like, yeah, this is what my life was. Welcome to puberty from a girl's perspective. So 10 out of 10, go watch. And if you're looking for more Judy Blume momness in your life, you should check out Judy Blume Forever, which is a documentary about her life and her work, and that she's not just a children's author. She's a teen novelist. She basically created YA. It's on Amazon. It's really great. I'm glad I watched both back to back.
Yeah, it's definitely on my list. Although I will say that when I heard that there was a Judy Blume Forever movie, I thought it was about the book Forever. Which was like one of the first overtly sexual books that so many people my age read. So,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be like a drama that was forever. But thankfully, I don't know, thankfully, there could be a forever drama. I don't care. But yeah, Judy Blume Forever, the documentary is on Amazon and it's on my list.
Love it. And as we pivot from TV moms to our real moms, now it's time to talk about our own moms. And I thought a fun question would be, if someone were going to play your mom in a biopic, who would that be?
It's a great question. And I think you have an answer. So why don't you go ahead and then I'll add my answer.
I'm not sure why this has always been the answer, but Catherine O'Hara specifically in Home Alone, I'm not sure if I just associated that character with the red hair because my mom had red hair, but also she was like so busy. She was like a hard worker and she ran around and she didn't have like 8 kids or, she never left us alone anywhere. But I just feel like maybe that Catherine O'Hara or like Molly Ringwald should be my mom in a biopic.
Right. I think that's great. And, Catherine O'Hara, just in general, could be somebody who plays someone as they age because, she also, if the person were in like a very like artist, like an avant-garde artist, then you could be Catherine O'Hara from Beetlejuice. And if, you're mom who leaves the kid at home, then, that's Catherine O'Hara in Home Alone. Or if it's somebody who's like a little quirky, but is really good at folk singing, then you could be Catherine O'Hara in A Mighty Wind. So
she's really good at being a mom, isn't she?
Yeah.
She plays moms a lot.
Yeah. She's very good.
Okay, Esther, what about you?
I think, it's hard because my mom was ill like the last years of her life. So there was a lot of wheelchair time. So it's really challenging me to think to who she was before she became ill. And I think that one of the things that has been pointed out to us is that maybe she looks a little bit like an older Tina Fey. And I, of course, love that because I identify with Tina Fey and sometimes wish I were like Tina Fey. So I think when I was thinking about this question, like an older Tina Fey, or maybe actually the Liz Lemon character in some ways because of the sarcasm. She also had like occasional eye rolls that she would use to communicate her frustration when she didn't want to say anything bad, so, she would just look and you'd know. And also, she probably had the occasional frustration when her coworkers, as we're now known, the kids who live at home with their mom, the coworkers would be obstinate or annoying. Then we definitely felt her frustration, especially I did as the oldest. It was something I could notice and see when she was just like really annoyed with my brothers. So... yeah, it's an imperfect answer, and I reserve my right to change it for next year.
Good, I like it. I can't wait to hear your answer next year. And then also I was thinking of I know it's so hard to name a memory, but I was noticing that when all these people say in the cards for Mother's Day, they're always like, thank you, Mom, for all that you do. You do so much. And it's well, what are one of those things? What are one of our, what's a memory or a story that we can think about that kind of encapsulates who our moms were?
I also appreciate your were, because I really view my mother as somebody who still is my mother. There's a lot of language in the community of, parent loss where people talk about that they didn't have a mother anymore. And that's never really resonated with me as a way to think about this. My mother was, and forever shall be my mother, even if she's not someplace I can talk to her right now. So I'll say also in terms of the memory or story, the more years that she's been gone, the harder it is to think of these stories on command. And they often come back when I'm not expecting them, not when I want them to pop up. So I end up giving the same answers that I always give, is that there's a couple of moments that I think really encapsulate who she was. We used to make her chocolate chip pancakes every year. for Mother's Day, for her birthday, sometimes for my parents' anniversary. Like, we knew she loved chocolate chips. So we made her chocolate chip pancakes all the time. And then, like, when we were growing up, she actually told us that she doesn't really like chocolate chip pancakes. So it's like literally decades of us bringing her something she doesn't like.
Oh my God.
But she never told us until we were older and tried to make, she was always afraid of, like, she didn't want to hurt our feelings. She knew that it was the thought that counted. So I thought that was, that's really one of those stories that I told at her funeral, and I've told several times since. It's just one of those things that really gets you, right?
I love that.
And
that's such a mom thing.
Yeah. And I realized also that these stories that I've been telling for years, you haven't heard yet. So they're new to you. So
I love them.
So then there's another thing that she used to do, which is she always used to make lists. And I think a lot of people are list makers, and I've tried to become a list maker. I make lists and have things that are been on there for a very long time. But she used like a motivational tactic where she would write a list, and the first item on the list would be make a list. So when you got to the end, you could cross it. When you finished your list, you could cross off the first thing and make it seem like you'd achieved something.
Esther, I do that all the time. I wish I could show you. I think I threw it away, but I literally wrote a list today, and the first 3 things on my list were
Make a list,
get out of bed, brush your teeth, so that you do those things.
That's really good. So yeah. And again, that kind of thing where people are like, "Oh my God, I do that," and whenever I do that, I think of your mom. It's like a way to remember her and keep her memory going.
I love that.
And there's also something that, again, she really tried hard to protect us when we were younger, and actually into adulthood too. That's just what moms do often. And I remember the first summer I went to sleepaway camp. I went to Camp Vermont in the Berkshires, and I was very nervous about being away. It was my first time away from home. I was way older than I should have been for my first time away from home, but I was really upset and crying. And so my mom kept it together when she dropped me off at camp. And then I learned later that she was on her way home and she had to pull over the car because she was crying about dropping me at camp. So like, she knew I would, if I stuck it out, I would be okay. But that idea of, trying to stay strong for me, which I appreciated, but like, I can imagine like, what would that experience have been if I had seen her cry also?
Mm-hmm.
Like, would that have helped me, or would that have been worse? I don't know. But it's just one of those things that I think about like trying to keep it together until you're in private, and then using that private space to really feel emotion. And like I said, I have mixed feelings about that story. But it is something that it's a tension that I grapple with sometimes, about like trying to keep things together and seem strong, but also being in touch with my vulnerability and my emotions.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me. I know I'm new, but I love hearing these stories, and I love hearing about your mom. You don't talk about her often, so I'm glad when you do.
Well, my mom is not usually in pop culture conversations. So
sometimes she pops in, and I love when she does.
Yes. What about you, Erin? You've got some stories.
I have a couple. I mean, like, obviously, but also, like, I think it's when you get older, it suddenly stories and memories you just remember having. They are a little fuzzy, and sometimes I do need someone to retell me a story, so I don't forget. I was thinking in the car today, my mom was always working, and I remember like going to see her after school and like hanging out in the back, and that building, has been completely redone ever since. And like, she'd give me money, and I'd run across to the Panera, and I'd get like a muffin top, and she let me eat it. And like, she didn't care if it was junk food. She was just like, okay, you can have it. Like, let's go and we'll hang out at work. And like, it was just always nice seeing her like working. It was very cool. And we didn't really do a lot of like big things growing up. We had like awesome childhood, very fun, but we didn't do big vacations. We didn't go see concerts or musicals. Like, it was really expensive. And so I remember Paul McCartney was coming to Detroit. I think it was like 2000. I'm not even going to tell you. It was something, and it was my 15th birthday.
Right, because it might seem like a long time ago and you would feel old.
10 years. Okay, well, I haven't did it. It was a long time ago. And Paul McCartney was in town and I had never seen him. And I loved the Beatles. Like some kids had Jonas Brothers posters on their wall. But right next to mine were like Beatles posters everywhere. And I begged my mom. I was like, we don't even have to go. Like, we don't have to go inside Comerica Park. Let's just grab dinner and walk around. And it's an outdoor baseball park. We can just listen. We'll listen from outside. It'll be a free concert. It'll be great. So we drive down to Detroit and it was a sold out concert, but miraculously there were tickets available. And my mom, she just walks up to the ticket booth and she goes like, are there any tickets available? And they're like, yeah, we have 2 tickets. And she looks at me and then like without even thinking, she just pulls out her wallet and just pays. And we go inside and suddenly like the coolest thing my mom has ever done is just like spontaneously get us tickets to Paul McCartney. And it was great. And he played stuff that he hadn't played in years. And it was an awesome memory. And like a lot of the time I have memories with my dad because my mom would work on the weekend. So a lot of my movie exposure, my music exposure was from my dad a lot of the time. So it was really awesome having like a music memory that was just me and my mom. And not even like my brother. It was just the 2 of us going to the concert. And
that's really special.
It was a very cool time. So thanks, Mom.
Nice job, Marcy.
Yeah. I feel like I always, complain and, moms and daughters, they fight. Sometimes they don't always see eye to eye or whatever. But it's always like, I should tell her a lot. I don't always tell her enough that like, she loves so hard. She works so hard. She's someone who like protects and fights and cheers for you so hard. She's kind of like a lion, right? Like they're not friends with all other people, but like when like they find someone that they love, they protect it like no matter what. And I feel like that's her. And I feel like that's something that like I've inherited. Like I think I've inherited where like I just care so much about so many people. And also like just seeing her be one of the hardest working people I know. I feel like that drive of like wanting to work, like without realizing it, I think is something I also learned from her as well. So thanks, Mom.
Yeah. That's
what are some things
like, that I've gotten from my mom.
That you've taken with her.
I think, part of it is probably nature and part of it is nurture. It's like it's a combo pack. I inherited her sense of the importance of family.
Mm-hmm.
As you noted, mothers and daughters are complicated, even under the best conditions. And I will say that for the most part, we were under the best conditions, which was great. But, there are definitely things that I've inherited in terms of things that my mother thought about herself and about me. I won't get into what they are, but it can be challenging when looking back to try to put those things in order of the entirety of the package. And I know this is sounding very esoteric and non-concrete, but that's fine. I just think that maybe I have things that I would have talked with her about, but had avoided. But I mean, that's just life. You can't say everything to everyone all of the time. So yeah, I think the importance of family is definitely up there. She also had like a real sense of awe when looking at children. And I agree. I think that children can be magic. I think that when you see a kid think something and what they're thinking because it's like written all over their face, I think that's just like a really strange but wonderful moment of connection.
I can attest to this. I've seen you with children, and it's one of the most magical things I've ever seen.
I feel this way, especially about babies, because I think it's hilarious when babies find things funny. Like, how do they know? How do they know what's funny? What is funny about it? So then it's like, is it slapstick? Is it seeing something unexpected? Is it a noise that they didn't expect to hear? A sensation, a vibration?
Right now. You're Abe with the child right now. You're interviewing the child. Yes. What did you find funny technically? What was technically amusing to you in this moment?
Right. Well, I don't ask them because I know they're not going to answer. But I think that, those moments are often just so entertaining and invigorating. I just had this with a cousin of mine in Israel had a baby like a year ago. The baby is like 8 months old. So obviously it wasn't a year ago. But the baby is so cute and just so interactive. And really, like, when you look at them in their eyes and they're like making eye contact and they're smiling and they're kind of saying, "What's next? I know you have something." So I really love that. And it's really, like I said, it's just super invigorating. The one other thing that I have been noticing about myself is that I keep telling my brothers and my nephews to be careful about things. So like, I'll say something to my brother like, "Oh, when you go to the airport, don't forget to take your passport. And, do you have a sweater to wear on the plane?" And he would say something like, "Thanks, Mom." And it's just like one of those things that I've picked up. And especially my nephews who, engage in all manner of, possibly dangerous things. I always like, "Oh my God, be careful, be careful, be careful. Oh, don't forget to bring a sweater because when you come back tonight, it's going to be late and it's going to be cold." And so that's one of the things that I've picked up and probably annoy people with.
I love that. And also, I want to give a shout out to the aunts and grandmothers and mother-in-law that also helped raise me. I have 2 Aunt Amy's who I feel like I've learned so much about and have taught me so many things just about having fun and like being free. And my grandmothers, they've taught me a lot. And it's been really interesting watching things like Grace and Frankie and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel with them because they see things in themselves that it's just like, now that I watch Grace and Frankie, it literally is like watching my grandmothers share a house together. And Beth, my mother-in-law, she's known me since I was like 11. And so she really has been a part of my life for a long time too, and has helped me grow in a lot of ways too. So it takes a village, and it's really nice when there's a lot of women in your life and in your corner rooting for you too.
It's funny that you use that it takes a village, because I was just about to say that, having been at your wedding, I saw your village. Your village showed up, and if I didn't know who your mother was, I could have thought like any of your aunts were your mother. The vibe was very much, it's our baby who's getting married today. Like, she's ours. Yeah. Like, we've lifted her up on Pride Rock, like like Simba, and they're like, "Love it, that kind of thing. And that they wanted to do that with you at your wedding, but it would have been inappropriate because you're wearing a dress. But I just really got that feeling of the village that raised you. So I think that's very aptly put.
So if you're listening, thanks for listening. Thanks for always supporting us. Yes. We love you.
Totally. I will say, just like in closing, I have a couple of more things that I feel like I've been influenced by my mother about. So that's not really a sentence that she would have approved of. I would have had to edit that. But I do repeat some of the things that she always said. So for instance, when other people are being annoying or mean or whatever, she would say that I should ignore the pettiness of other people. And if I really couldn't like just put my mind past it, then I should write their names on a piece of paper and then flush it down the toilet. That was...
I love that.
Because that would be like a physicalization of sending them away from me and getting them away from my brain. So that was one of the things that I always say, sometimes to myself and sometimes to other people. And the other thing that I will point to, which I've pointed to before, is that my mother was also a writer. She was also a journalist. I inherited writing on both sides from her and from my father. And the two of them wrote song parodies and did a Purim play and a Hanukkah play. So yeah, I mean, I never had a chance at a normal life. I was always going to end up here in this creative space.
I love that for you.
I'm glad you do, because here I am. And my mom is also the one who introduced me to Jewish journalism by letting me intern at the Jewish Standard in New Jersey, where she had been the managing editor, I think, at that point. And it was like really right at the very beginning. I was like 16, the year that you met Adam, or started dating Adam. But instead I was in an office in New Jersey, but it's exactly the same. And so Jewish journalism was where I eventually met you. So in a way, I like to think of her as also an honorary mom of this partnership and everything that we do here.
I love that.
Me too.
Your mom brought us to each other. Thanks,
right.
Mrs.
I mean,
K.
Eventually, yeah. But it was like when I was 16 and I was at the Jewish Standard and putting layout together, not using a computer, the idea that I got this call when I was there and it was like, someday you will be on a podcast with someone who has not been born yet. And then I was like,
what's a podcast?
I was like, what's a podcast? And then the voice was like, well, it's kind of like a blog, but it's vocal. And I was like, I don't know what a blog is. Is that like radio? Right. So anyway.
Now it's a Mel Brooks bit.
I know. And everything's a Mel Brooks bit. That's also inherited from the Kostanowitz family home. But anyway, thanks for giving me this challenge, Erin, because, it wouldn't necessarily have occurred to me to do this much thinking about my mom and the relationship to pop culture if you hadn't prompted it. So thank you for challenging me in that way.
Thank you for being so open. I know this is a hard month and I'm so glad you were able to share this with us. And I hope it also encourages other people to think about their moms and the people that raised them. And not just today, but every day. Obviously Mother's Day is over, but every day is an opportunity to kind of learn more about the people that help make you who you are. So
yeah. Yes. So thank you to everybody who is part of Erin's village for making her the way she is. And thank you to everybody who's part of my village and making me the way I am. So thank you, listeners. If any of you know our parents or know our moms and want to make suggestions of different people who should play them in the movie of our lives,
yes.
Please let us know. We cannot confirm or deny that there is a Bagel Report movie in the works that has only been
suspended. Bagels and bikinis.
It's only been stopped because of the WGA strike. So our writers are on strike, but otherwise we stand with the union. And yeah, but look for it in theaters approximately 2045, something like that.
Woohoo! This has been The Bagel Report, a production of Jay, the Jewish News of Northern California, and a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network. Thank you to Lev Gringaz, our producer from Jew Folk Inc., David A.M. Walensky and Andrew Essenston, and Danny Lipsky for creating our logo. You can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. Connect with us on social, on Twitter, at Esther K, at Eben Moshe, and at The Bagel Report, on Instagram at Esther Kostanowitz, at Eben Moshe, and TBR the Pod, and by emailing us at thebagelreport@gmail.com. Now go and watch something interesting, and maybe we'll talk about it next time on The Bagel Report.